Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. This time I'm going to be talking through what I do in order to take the base tank role at Vorago kills. It's definitely not going to cover everything there is to know about basing. There are a lot of advanced strategies for more optimal kills that I'm not going to go into, but it should hopefully give you enough knowledge to be able to start taking this role in your teams and getting some kills with it. This is, loosely speaking, a follow-on to my previous Vorago DPS guide. So I'll be assuming throughout that you've got at least a couple of kills as DPS or TL5, and you've got some understanding of the general way the fight works. I'm also going to be assuming at least a basic understanding of the different defensive abilities available. As far as gearing goes, there's nothing particularly special here. You basically just want to bring your best DPS gear. You certainly want power armor rather than tank armor, for example. The only thing of note is that you do want a shield. Preferably a tier 91 with the Turtling 4 perk, if you've got it. You also want to bring runes for Intercept, which is on the Ancient spellbook. First things first, as base tank, your responsibility for most of the fight is to be taking the aggression of Vorago and tanking him from melee distance. You're going to do this throughout the majority of the first two phases, and sometimes in bits of phases 3 and 4 as well. When you're learning, you might well want to take a Beast of Burden for some additional food, but with practice you need very little, if any, food to take on this role. As I'm going through this kill, I'm going to be talking through the particular mechanics you need to deal with as base, and the defensive abilities you need to use in order to handle them. In general, outside of that, I'm not going to be talking too much about the damage you're taking, but keep an eye on your health, and if at any point you're getting low, it's absolutely fine to use any of the defensive abilities that you're not about to need for a mechanic. To begin with, on drop down, you're going to provoke Vorago to get his aggression, and you're going to walk him over to the northeast corner. You'll obviously be on around about half health from the hit you took on drop down, so I'd suggest using Resonance immediately to hopefully get a big heal from his first hit, and that will just give you a bit more health to be working with during this phase. If for whatever reason you don't get this right, or potentially if he splashes on the Resonance hit, then you may want to eat up, use your Enhanced Excalibur or something like that, so you don't have to be worrying about your health immediately. From there, I'm going to put my melee prayer on. You'll see I'm going to be doing some soul split flicking, just to mitigate the amount of food I'm needing, but when you're learning, you absolutely don't need to do this if you don't feel comfortable with that. You can just camp melee pray. While you're keeping Vorago over here in the northeast corner, the TL5 is going to be running around the far side to get to the jump spot, and when they get there, they're going to provoke Vorago, and you'll see here he's wandering away from me over to where the TL5 is standing. Once he's moved, I'm going to bladed dive into the spot just behind him. It's really important that I do bladed dive here rather than walking across, because if I accidentally walk underneath Vorago as part of that, that could move him out of the way, and that will mean he's not in the right position for the TL5 to jump, and the two of you will need to work between yourselves to reset his positioning. If for whatever reason you don't get the positioning right, maybe the TL5 has moved wrong, maybe you've moved wrong, it doesn't matter, the important thing is not to panic. Just provoke Vorago to make sure you've got his aggression, and to walk with him back over to the east side where you were initially. The TL5 can then provoke him back, walk him into the right spot, and once more you can bladed dive into position before provoking Vorago back. Once the TL5 jumps, you should hopefully have pretty much phased Vorago, and so you can move very quickly into Phase 2. Phase 2 is where things start getting a little bit more interesting for base. You're going to encounter your first set of bleeds, which is a mechanic that Vorago is going to be using repeatedly throughout this fight. He inflicts 5 bleeds in total, and as the base tank, your responsibility is to take the first and second bleeds, at which point the bomb tank will provoke Vorago off you, and they will handle the rest of the bleeds together with the TL5. I'm assuming here, as I will be throughout this guide, that you've got at least 3 players in your team. There are different strats that you need for duo, but I'm not going to cover them here. As a general rule, in order to deal with your 2 bleeds, you want to be using Freedom, which will clear the first one, and then Escape to clear the second one. Escape will clear it as long as you move at least 6 squares away from where you were standing. So, if you have a look here, as soon as he drops down, I'll immediately get hit with a bleed. You can see it on my debuff bar here. I'm going to use Freedom to clear it. I'm going to provoke Vorago again. I'm then going to get hit with the second bleed, and I'm going to use Escape to clear that one. At that point, I will be the person furthest away from Vorago, so I will get a blue bomb coming out towards me, as you can see here, I'm just going to resonance this, and I'm then going to walk back into melee distance, or if you like you can barge your bladed dive back in, and once the TL5 has taken the 5th bleed from Vorago, you're going to provoke him so that his aggression switches back onto you. It's important to communicate with your bomb tank and TL5 here, particularly when you're learning. It can be a good idea to count the bleeds out loud, just so you don't accidentally miss one and provoke at the wrong time, or anything like that. A quick note on positioning. It's quite nice here if you can keep Vorago for the entire phase standing in the middle where he is here, and not walk him around. That just makes it easier for everybody to get consistent positioning. In order to do this, you want to start off standing where I am here. There's a set of cracks in the floor just where I am, which is shaped a little bit like an L, and you want to be standing here at the bottom of it. After you've escaped back, you want to walk back into this point to provoke him back, and if you, the bomb tank and TL5 are all doing that, then Vorago should stay standing where he is and not move anywhere. 3 auto attacks after the 5th bleed. Vorago is going to go into his reflects. We've encountered these before as DPS, and just like then, it's important that you stop attacking Vorago so that you don't damage any of your teammates. But as base tank, we also have a little bit of extra work to do here. When Vorago finishes his reflects, he's going to be sending a red bomb out towards the bomb tank, and in order to prevent damage from that, we're going to help our bomb tank out by using the abilities Barricade, an ultimate defensive ability, and Intercept, which is a spell on the ancient spellbook, for anybody who isn't familiar with it. Intercept will mean that any damage the bomb tank takes will get redirected to us, and Barricade will mean that we don't take any damage. With a combination of these, we can completely mitigate the damage the bomb tank is taking, and also give us a period where we're barricaded and can just soul split up. And we're going to want to do this on the 1st and 3rd bleed cycles during this phase. The bomb tank will return the favour during the 2nd bleed cycle to take some damage for us. Now, I've got a tier 90 shield, I've got the Turtling 4 perk on it, and I've also got the Malatops Ranch Out of Time perk, and the combination of these means that my barricade lasts for ages, which is lovely, because I don't need to worry too much about getting the timing exactly right. If you don't have these perks, you want to be a little bit more careful with it. But the ideal here is that you want to barricade after Vorago's 3rd auto attack during the set of reflects, and then intercept the bomb tank, and that'll mean you're still caded and intercepting them by the time they take that red bomb. Shortly after the end of the reflect, Vorago is going to go back into his bleed cycle, and we'll just repeat what we did before. Freedoming the 1st bleed, escaping out for the 2nd bleed, using resonance to get a heal from the bomb that comes out to us, and then running back to provoke Vorago again after the TL5 has taken the 5th bleed. And we keep repeating that. He's going to do 4 sets of bleeds during this phase. We're going to barricade and intercept, or Cade sept, the 1st and 3rd sets, and then on the 4th, somebody will click the gravity field, and we'll go immediately into the bring him down spam clicking bit, where there's nothing special we need to do as base, just do exactly the same as you would do if you were DPSing. With phase 2 out of the way, we're into phase 3. When I was filming this, we were on the Teamsplit rotation, and in Teamsplit, phase 3 is very chill. There's nothing special you need to do as base, you can just treat it exactly as you would a DPS role. Get into the box at the beginning, attack him for a bit, get off for the reflects, and then DPS him down after the 2nd Teamsplit to finish the phase. There's also not really anything special you need to do for any of Scopulus, Vitalis, or Ceiling Collapse rotations. The only couple that do have a bit of extra work for the base are Green Bomb and The End, but I'll cover those in detail in a separate video. You don't even have to melee tank him here. Vorago will happily stay where he is in the middle and just keep sending bombs out, but do communicate with your bomb tank here. If they're taking a little bit too much damage, if they're low on food or anything else, then you might want to move into melee distance and tank for a bit, just to help them out. Phase 4, once again, can be a pretty relaxed one as base. Waterfall and Stone Clone will happen as normal, as will the weekly mechanic, and for all of this you don't have to be tanking from melee distance if you don't want to. Again, Vorago will happily stay where he is and just send bombs at the bomb tank. Shortly after the mechanic, he will go into another set of bleeds and deal with this as you normally would do. Freedom the 1st, escape the 2nd, and so on, and once again, a while after the 5th bleed, he will then go into a set of reflects. You don't need to do anything special like cading or cepting here, because there'll be a waterfall immediately afterwards, so just keep your melee power on and use defensives if you need to mitigate any damage. As a quick note here, I'm just going to show that during this set of bleeds, the bomb tank didn't provoke Vorago off me early enough. This meant that I didn't get far enough away from him to clear the 2nd bleed, and I took the third bleed while the second bleed was still active. If this happens, then you will take a 6k hit, as you can see here, so just be ready for that, and if for whatever reason your bomb tank doesn't provoke in time, make sure you eat up so that you don't die for that. And then you're going to run and surge away to try and clear that third bleed, and hopefully the bomb tank will provoke him off you before you need to take a fourth. Now, that's all you necessarily need to do during phase 4 as base tank, but there is a strategy you can use here which significantly speeds up the phase, which is clone skipping. The idea here is that as soon as the waterfall finishes, when he would normally summon a stone clone, we're going to try and position Vorago so that he's on the opposite side of the arena from everyone except us. This will mean we're the only person he can attack, and because he doesn't summon a clone for the person he's focusing on, this will cause him to completely skip the stone clone mechanic and go straight into the weekly rotation mechanic, in this case, Teamsplit. In order to do this, as soon as the waterfall finishes, we're going to barge Vorago to get into melee distance with him, or you can bladed dive or surge, but barge is an easy option here. Going to provoke Vorago to get his aggro back onto you, just in case he was attacking someone else for whatever reason, and then you're going to walk underneath Vorago, and walking underneath him will cause him to move out of the spot he's standing in. If you then continue to walk underneath him as he moves, you'll be able to get him all the way across the far wall as he's doing here, and hopefully if the rest of your team is staying back where they are on the other side, then they'll be far enough from Vorago that, as you can see happening here, he doesn't summon the clone and we move straight into Teamsplit. The only thing to be aware of is that for the duration of the time that you're walking Vorago over, you will be taking all his attacks, and that might mean that you take some bombs as well as some melee attacks, so just watch out for that, eat up or use defensives if you need to mitigate damage. With phase 4 out of the way, we are on to phase 5. And during most rotations, there's nothing at all special you need to do as base here. You can just chill and DPS Vorago, and hopefully get him to the back and finish the fight. In smaller teams, there's a strategy you can do, where you and the bomb tank switch positions every time Vorago is using his bleeds. That can be helpful in smaller teams, but in larger teams like this, it's unlikely to be needed, and you can just put your DPS hat on and try and finish the phase as quickly as possible. As I said, there's plenty more I could go into here, but for the time being, that's hopefully given you at least a reasonable idea of what to expect and how to deal with the main mechanics as the base tank role, and will hopefully allow you to start getting some kills with it. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you for the next video.